Welcome to my channel, Sella Buzz. The TV studio lights were nice and warm. They didn't make noise or flash. They just lit up everything nicely. Behind the cameras there were people working, people who make shows, sound helpers, and a quiet crowd. But no one made any noise right now. Johnny Depp sat in the middle chair. He looked relaxed but not careless. He wore a black jacket that was a little wrinkled at the arms. He had rings on every finger, and his hair was pulled back behind his shoulders. For the first time in years, he wasn't wearing sunglasses. Across from him sat Liam Monroe, the person who asks questions on the show. Not to be mean, but to ask the one question no one else was brave enough to ask. They had been talking for 20 minutes already about art, his music band, and painting alone in small French towns. The air between them had been calm, easy, and normal. But now Leah looked down at her question papers, then slowly back up. "Johnny," she said, almost whispering. "Can I ask you something a little harder?" He didn't move. He nodded gently. Very gently. She waited. "I want to be nice, but I think this is something people still wonder about." He waited too. She looked at him, not like a reporter but like a regular person. "Do you still think about her?" The room went completely quiet. The person making the show stopped moving. The crowd moved just a little, like they were scared to breathe. Johnny didn't answer right away. He sat still, looking down a little, touching his fingers together in his lap. His face didn't get hard, it got softer. Leah took a breath, almost sorry she asked the question. "We can skip it if you want." He stopped her gently. His voice was soft. "You're not wrong to ask," he said. He looked up again. His eyes were clear and quiet. "Yes," he said. Leah's eyes got wide. "You do?" "Of course I do," Johnny said. "You don't just erase someone from your brain because they hurt you. That's not how remembering works." The lights above felt darker. Or maybe everything else had just gone quiet. "I don't think about her with anger anymore. Not like I used to," he said. "That kind of remembering burns through you. Makes every day feel like smoke." Leah leaned forward. "Then how do you remember her?" There was a pause that was long and careful. He looked down again and breathed out through his nose. "Quietly," he said. She didn't understand at first. "What does that mean?" He looked her in the eyes again. "It means I don't hate her." Silence filled the room. "I did hate her. For a while I was mad. I felt embarrassed. I felt like the whole world was laughing at me and I couldn't even tell my side of what happened. But hate is loud. And after everything I just wanted quiet." His voice had no anger and no bitterness in it. "Just waiting. She was broken," he said. "I was broken too. We broke each other. And then we blamed each other for the pieces that were left." Leah's voice was barely heard. "Why didn't you ever say this before?" He smiled a small, tired smile. "Because no one was listening," he said. "They were looking for big stories. For a bad guy. For someone to feel sorry for. But not for the truth." There was a flicker in his eyes. "Now sad but not without hope. You're the first person who's asked me that without hoping I'd say bad things about her." He leaned back in his chair slowly. "I could have said bad things. I had stories and proof. I could have ruined her reputation." A pause. "But I didn't want to be right. I wanted to be free." Leah stared at him. Her question cards were useless now. She put them aside on the table between them. "Thank you," she said, with her voice cracking a little. He tilted his head. "For what?" "For not giving them the ending they wanted," she said. Johnny looked down once more, then back at her, eyes steady. "I've already lived the ending," he said. "Now I just want peace." The red light on the camera blinked quietly. The room had been still for 5 whole minutes, but no one noticed the time. Everyone had just heard something rare. A man who could have destroyed someone but chose not to. And somehow that was the loudest thing he'd ever said. Before the clapping, before the quiet answers, before the room fell still, there was noise. Endless mean noise. The kind that doesn't go away when the news moves on to other things. The kind that gets into your bones and whispers in your sleep. It started with a photo of Johnny walking out of a courtroom with his head down, face half hidden by his hat. The internet lit up in seconds. One side cheered, one side booed. No one waited for facts. No one cared about being quiet. The world had picked a side before the trial even started. He remembered the way his name changed. How Johnny Depp stopped meaning actor, artist, and father, and started meaning trouble. Someone who hurts people, and someone who drinks too much. People didn't speak his name nicely, they spit it out. Or worse, they whispered it like it was something bad. One day, while checking into a hotel using a fake name, the person at the front desk whispered, "You used to be someone famous." He smiled at her nicely, then walked to his room and closed the door before the sadness reached his mouth. He spent nights in hotel rooms with the curtains closed, painting faces that didn't exist and playing guitar music that made no sense. Some nights he drank alcohol, some nights he just stared at the wall. His phone lit up every hour with messages. You should make a statement. You need to defend yourself. The silence makes you look guilty. He said nothing. Not because he didn't want to, but because no one wanted to hear him speak. They just wanted noise to fight with. His lawyer once asked him, "What's your biggest fear right now?" Johnny had answered without thinking, "That my kids will think I became the monster the world made up." The lawyer didn't speak after that. What could the lawyer say? Because even if Johnny won the case, what would be left? The trial became a show. The crowd had already chosen their heroes and bad guys. People live-streamed every second, made jokes about every move, and built whole careers off reaction videos. They weren't watching to understand. They were watching to eat it up like entertainment. But in the middle of the storm, something strange happened. Johnny stopped fighting the noise and started listening to the silence between it. There was one morning just before a court day where he stood by a window with a mug of cold coffee. He looked out at the gray sky and thought, "This isn't who I am. Not the man in the magazines, not the man in the hate comments, not even the man on the witness stand. Just a man who's tired, very tired, and trying to stay human." That day in court, he had looked across the room at her. She didn't meet his eyes, and for the first time he didn't feel hate or even anger. Just a hollow sort of sadness. Not the kind you feel when someone dies, but the kind you feel when something you believed in dies and you're still alive to bury it. The world kept turning. The jury gave their answer. People cheered, cried, argued, and posted on social media. But Johnny didn't celebrate. He just breathed out and disappeared. He took a flight to a quiet place in Europe. He left his phone off, let his beard grow, painted pictures, walked around, sat by the sea, and for the first time in years, he listened to his own thoughts. One day, standing alone on a rocky shore, he whispered out loud to no one, "If the world ever asks me again, I'll tell them the truth." But not for revenge, for peace. And now, back in the studio with Liam Monroe's eyes watching him gently, that day had come and he was ready. It had been raining that day in Los Angeles. Not the usual sprinkle and sun kind of rain, but the rare soaking wall of water kind that made everything feel slower and softer. Johnny was in his kitchen with no shoes on, coffee in one hand, listening to Miles Davis play through the speakers. The trial was over. The world was quieter, or at least it had turned its attention to someone else, but the silence wasn't peace yet. Then came the knock. 3 gentle taps on the door. He opened the door to see her, Lily Rose, his daughter. No cameras, no reporters. When she asked, "Do you still think about her?" His daughter's voice echoed in his mind, not the question but the belief behind it. The belief that her father could choose respect over destruction. And when he answered, he wasn't just speaking to Leah. He was answering the question his daughter asked him in the quiet of a rainy afternoon. "Can you still be whole after someone tried to break you?" And his answer was yes. Not with revenge, but with the kind of love that lasts longer than pain. The silence had gone on so long it started to hum like electricity. Johnny sat still, his fingers folded together gently, elbows resting on his knees. His head was slightly down, not in shame, but in deep thought. Across from him, Liam Monroe waited. She wasn't pushing. She wasn't poking. She was simply holding space for him to think. The world outside the studio didn't know it yet, but it was about to hear something that no court, no camera, and no confession had ever shown before. Johnny finally looked up. "You asked me," he said quietly, "if I still think about her." Leah nodded her head. He breathed out slowly through his nose. "I do. Not because I miss her and not because I want revenge, but because that chapter, no matter how painful, was part of my life." His voice was calm and steady, but not like he had practiced it. "She hurt me," he continued, "in ways I don't talk about, not even to myself." Some days the camera zoomed in slowly on his face, which looked open and raw with emotion. But I realized something. He paused, then spoke the words the room would never forget. "I pitied her." Leah blinked, caught off guard by his answer. He didn't wait for her reaction. She wanted to be right more than she wanted to be loved. And when someone needs the world to love them more than they love themselves, they burn everything around them just to feel warm. There was no bitterness in his voice, only sadness. "I used to be angry, furious. I wanted people to see what she did, to know I wasn't what they said I was. But the truth is, proving you're right doesn't heal you. It just quiets the noise," Leah whispered, "and the pain?" He gave a half smile. The pain you carry a little longer. Behind the glass, the producer slowly took off his headset. He couldn't hear anything in his earpiece anymore, only the weight of what had just been said. A stage helper behind the camera wiped her eyes. Even the lighting person standing by a light switch seemed frozen. Changing the brightness might break the spell that had fallen over the room. Johnny leaned back in his chair, the leather making soft sounds beneath him. I've spent years now trying to rebuild. Not my career, not my name, just myself. Leah was quiet for a beat, then softly asked, "Do you ever wish you'd said more back then?" He looked her straight in the eyes. "No," he said. "I wish I had said less and listened more. I wish I had left sooner. I wish I had loved myself enough to walk away the first time I felt small." The honesty in that sentence cracked something invisible open in the room. "I don't hate her," he repeated. "I just stopped trying to save someone who was never drowning." Leah's voice broke a little. "Johnny, why now? Why speak this truth here tonight?" He gave a small shrug. "Because this isn't about her anymore," he said. "It's about what I've learned, about what pain does to people, and about how you can survive being lied about without becoming the lie." For a long time, no one said anything. Then Leah whispered, "That was the most unexpected answer you could have given." Johnny smiled gently. "Sometimes kindness is unexpected." He stood up slowly, offering her his hand to shake. She took it. And the world, though it didn't know it yet, had just watched something rare. Not a man's revenge, but his freedom. There was no clapping, not yet. Just the soft hum of cameras resetting, and a long, still breath between two people who had said more with silence than most do with shouting. Johnny stayed standing for a moment, then sat back down. Leah looked at her producer, who gave a small nod from behind the glass. "Would you mind," she asked gently, "telling us something no one knows? Not about her, about you." He tilted his head slightly, thinking. Then he spoke. "There was a village in the south of France," he said. "Not famous, no film festivals, just an old bookshop and a bakery that smelled like vanilla and old wood." He smiled a little. "I went there after the trial, disappeared for a while. I didn't speak much, didn't dress like anyone special. I just walked, painted, and sat by the sea." Leah listened without stopping him. "One afternoon," Johnny continued, "I was drawing by a cafe window. Nothing important, just a boat in the harbor. This woman, maybe in her 60s, came and sat at the next table." He looked down at his hands. "She didn't speak to me, didn't ask for a photo, just drank her tea and watched the waves." Then he reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and slowly pulled out a folded old piece of paper. "She left this on my table when she left," he said, offering it to Leah. She opened it carefully. It was handwritten in thin cursive writing. "The way you held your silence said more than anything," she screamed. "Some of us still see you." Not the headline, the man. Leah stared at the note, her lips shaking. Johnny looked away for a moment, his eyes distant. "I never saw her again," he said softly. "I don't know her name, but I think she saved me." It wasn't the verdict from the jury. It wasn't the interviews or the internet or the fan videos. It was one note from one stranger, someone who saw through the smoke and chose to speak to the soul. Then Johnny said, "I didn't need the world to believe me. I just needed to believe I could live again." Leah folded the note, her hands shaking slightly, and gave it back to him. He put it away without looking at it. "You know," he said after a pause, "I don't tell that story because it's dramatic. I tell it because it was quiet and real and human." Leah nodded slowly. "That's why it matters." Johnny looked at her, something soft behind his eyes. "I've made peace with the fact that I'll always be someone's bad guy. That's okay. What matters is being my daughter's hero and my own." The lights above them got darker just a little. A sign from the booth that the interview was almost done, but in truth it had already ended at the moment he chose peace over pity. Leah smiled. Not the kind of smile you use for TV, but a real one. "Thank you," she said, "for trusting us with the story no one knew." Johnny stood again, this time to leave. As he turned, he said one last thing without looking back. "Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is not tell your side of the story. Just live it better than they imagined you could." The moment Johnny Depp walked off that TV set, the crew didn't speak. Not for several seconds. It wasn't just a good interview. It was something else. The camera operator took off his headset and said quietly, "That wasn't content. That was closure." Leah sat in her chair, her notes untouched, her heart racing. Her producer's voice finally crackled into her earpiece. Don't cut a single second. Upload it raw. An hour later, the interview went live under a simple title, Johnny Depp Speaks, not with rage, but with grace. In 6 hours, it had 5 million views. By midnight, it was on the front page of every social media feed in the world. But the comments were different. They weren't arguing about him. They were thanking him. I didn't expect to cry tonight, but I did. This is what healing looks like. He could have embarrassed her. He chose to spare her. That's strength. I pitied her. The quietest and most powerful thing I've ever heard. The video spread like wildfire. Clips flooded TikTok and Instagram, cut to piano music and black and white filters. A few users added courtroom footage. Others showed fan art, letters, even side-by-side videos of Johnny playing guitar alone. A teenager in Germany posted a 12-second video just whispering. He didn't scream. He didn't shake. And still the whole world heard him. It got 2.7 million likes in a day. In London, a wall painting appeared overnight. Johnny's face was painted across a brick wall with the words, "Kindness isn't weakness." In Paris, a cafe that once took down his poster after the lawsuit quietly put it back up next to a small handwritten sign that read, "Forgiveness is louder than fury." And in Los Angeles, someone left flowers outside the courthouse where it all began. No name, just a note. Thank you for not becoming the monster they made you out to be. But Johnny, he didn't open Instagram, didn't repost, didn't tweet. He spent that evening in a small bar in Santa Monica, playing guitar with friends, smiling softly as strangers watched, then recognized him, then said nothing, just a nod, just respect. Someone in the crowd said, "We love you, Johnny." He paused between chords and looked up. "Love's easy," he said. "It's what you do with it that matters." And then he kept playing. He could have shouted. He could have named every bruise. He could have ruined her back. But instead, he set himself free. And in doing so reminded the world that the most powerful thing a man can do is choose not to destroy what already broke him.